Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I am very excited. I always say that, but I always am for today's event. We are hosting today WordPress in Education, what we teach when we teach WordPress. Good morning to everyone in the chat. If you want to just join, say if you're join, say where you're joining from, what you're looking forward to about today. Just we're ready to get started. Um, so First things first, I'm just going to do a little bit of introduction, give you some background and announcements, and then we will jump into our first session. My name is Pilot Irwin. I am a WP Campus community member, board member, and the director of events. And we're really excited to have you all join us for the next few hours, having insightful, informative conversations about the different roles that WordPress can play in education. While I have you all here, I also want to take this opportunity to announce our next summit, Rollbacks, Recovery, and Rebuilding, Lessons Learned from What Went Wrong, which will take place on Thursday, June 11th. This topic was actually requested by attendees of our last summit. So if you have ideas for things that you want to see in the future, let us know. Registration for that is now open, and we will put the link in the chat now.
If
We're also
Pilot
going to
wouldn't
be
have told
inviting.
me, we would have scheduled that for April 1st. But that is just too soon from today's summit, so we're gonna schedule that out in a few months.
Yep. Yeah. And we're going to put it a little bit after finals for people who will be wrapping up the year then. Um, we also are inviting, just a second, I'm putting this in the chat now. We also are inviting our community members to share short talks for this event, talking about projects that didn't go so well and what they learned. Like I said, this was a popular request, uh, but we also don't want to put anyone on the spot. So if you are interested in sharing, the call for proposals is open from now until Thursday, May 7th, and I'll be putting that link in the chat as well. This will be very low commitment, short talks. So we're encouraging anyone who thinks they might be interested to just go ahead and submit. Um, it's really important to us to make sure that our programming reflects the needs and the interests of our community. So as I said, if you have an idea for an event you'd like to see, or you have feedback on a past event, please let us know. I also want to highlight that WP Campus is a nonprofit, 100% volunteer organization. We are able to provide events like this one today because of the dedication of all of the individuals who donate their time, their energy, and their skills in support of our mission and in building our community. So thank you to everyone who's taking the time to join us today, especially to our guest presenters who are volunteering their time and their expertise to share with you. Today's webinar will be recorded and it will be posted on our website and on YouTube. So if you are only able to make part of the session, we're very excited to have you while you're here, and you'll be able to catch up later as well. After today's agenda, we will also be closing out the event with a half-hour hangout from 12:30 to 1 p.m. Eastern, WP Campus after hours, for anyone who wants to stick around and participate in an open discussion, hangout session, catch up, socialize. With all that said, I will now hand things over to Ed Beck and our keynote speaker, Isota Pereira. Happy learning, everybody. Take it away.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Ed Beck. I am an instructional designer from SUNY Oneonta. I am our open and online learning specialist. I am also, for this year, serving as WP Campus president. I have the really pleasure to introduce Izata Paera. And Izata has been working with the WordPress Foundation, especially leading the WordPress credits program, connecting students within the WordPress ecosystem with internship-like hands-on open source experiences. She's been really creating these educational programs to try to inspire what the next generation of open source collaborators is going to look like. So we're really looking at what these students are able to do, what is available to them from the WordPress Foundation, and also what other opportunities are coming from the WordPress education program in general. So we're going to just do this interview style to start with, and we'll kick it off just asking Azada to introduce herself and also to say, how did you end up here and part of the WordPress community?
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Violet. Thanks a lot, WP Campus, for giving us this space. Well, first of all, disclaimer, I'm very excited to be here. I am a decent amount of pretty nervous. So not decent amount, I'm pretty nervous. So please excuse me if I make up words that don't exist in English. I'm not a native English speaker, but feel free also to correct me in the chat if I say any nonsense. So, well, Ed, thanks a lot for bringing me here. In my case, my journey with WordPress started in 2018, 2019. At that point, I had launched a business. I was organizing culinary events in Madrid, Spain. I needed a website. I had no idea how to do that. So I hired a professional and they told me, okay, I only work with WordPress. Okay, I'm willing to learn. So they created my website. They taught me some basic things I need to know to be able to become at least a beginner user. And at that point, I had no idea that beyond a tool, there was such huge community. I discovered the forums first. I got very scared because I realized that I didn't even know how to ask a question. Like I didn't know how to explain the problems that I was having. And then, okay, I left. And it wasn't until 2021 when, because of COVID, you can imagine, I had to shut down all in-person events. And I found myself looking for joining a company. In these years, I had become a community manager. I was managing online communities, and the community manager, a friend of mine, sent me an opening position she saw on LinkedIn, and it was for an American company, Automatics, looking for hiring community managers to be sponsored to work full time supporting the WordPress community. So I joined Automatic. I learned about all the WordPress contribution teams, what is this huge community, what the contribution teams were doing. And until last year, I've been sponsored to contribute full time to the community team, supporting event organizers worldwide. And last year, got the opportunity to try and to be involved in this new board that opened up about like creating programs specifically focusing on education. And here I am.
So yeah, I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. I mean, for a long time, outreach from WordPress made it was meetups, it was WordCamps. Why is this an important moment to start thinking about outreach to higher education? What's pushing this shift in strategy?
Yeah. Well, it all started in 2023. Actually, within the global WordPress community team, a lot of contributors, volunteers, events, program managers around the world. Within the WordPress community, we were brainstorming with event organizers what different event formats could work to first overcome the post-COVID the post-COVID moment where in-person events seem to have been stopped or slowed down worldwide, and also understand what were the needs of the community at this point, because we saw that reproposing the same event format wasn't working anymore. So it all started from there. The community piloted different new formats, or formats at least new to our community. And one that really worked perfectly was a workshop program on campus. We had different ideas about new audiences to reach because, well, it is a reality that as any other program or project, if we don't connect younger generation, who knows how long the program is going to live. And also, we also realized that at schools or in traditional education, there's not that much content about open source and why this is important and how students or younger people could benefit from learning and interacting with it. So one of the formats we tested was a workshop run only on campus for students of the specific school or inviting students from other schools. But we were looking into creating collaboration and starting relationship with institutions instead of having our event outside and just invite students to come. So this worked. So this gave us, okay, sort of green flag that at schools, with university, with traditional education institutions, there could be space for WordPress, and there was a high demand as well. And we found out that many places wanted to have activities or learning moments around WordPress, but often they didn't know who to reach out to or didn't know how to do it. So it all started there.
Mhm. Excellent. So, one of the key programs here is what you're calling the WordPress Campus Connect program. Can you explain what this program is and how you're hoping to interact with educational spaces? And I have a question for the audience as well. While we start to think about this, um, I know that we're spread across the entire university. Some of us are in the library system, some of us are in marketing systems. Could you throw in the chat, if you work with students, where you're located in your organizational structure? So
Lovely.
back to you, Azada.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me connected with with them. And thanks everyone who has been interacting in the chat. Sure. Um, Campus Connect format is exactly what I was mentioning earlier, workshop. We've tried for years to invite teachers and students to WordCamps or to the meetups, and they usually come, but the audiences, the number of students we were able to reach weren't high. So we thought, okay, what if we provide them with facilitators, with a structure that allows them to create one day or multiple day workshop on campus so students can have, and students and teachers can have in their own, let's say, um, safe space, all the benefits that they would have coming to another WordPress event. And also this could be a very easy first and quick step for teachers and students to approach WordPress, because of course, we look for collaboration with the teachers. They would provide the space, but that's all. So then we go, the community people from the community, facilitators, many of them are already teachers, so they can go help facilitating a workshop of different topics, or we can help teachers prepare to run this workshop. Is it okay if I share a link to the program page?
Absolutely.
Yes, thanks.
So
So
what
I'm
type
gonna
of
be sharing
resources
this.
do you share with someone? Like let's say you convinced, I'm seeing in the chat we've got librarians, we've got professors, we've got some are teaching web design, which seems, very applicable. Some are might surprise you, though don't surprise me, or an English teacher that also just manages the multi-site as a side gig at their institution to make sure that it's available to the whole space. So say like you convinced them. What kind of resources is the program starting to build and to share?
Well, by signing up to apply to organize the Campus Connect, you get immediate support from the global WordPress community team. So mentor who can guide you on, okay, best practices depending on your needs, what like recommendation on how to plan and organize your event. You can request support into getting like the community providing you with the facilitators you might need. Of course, you get a website. Your event would show up here in WordPress events page and in the WordPress dashboard. So anybody worldwide using WordPress, well, worldwide, if in in a range, in a specific range of miles from where you are located, their event also, like your events also would pop up on their dashboards. And also we have, we can provide up to $300 per campus to provide snacks or drinks for students and teachers. And this is thanks to the global sponsors of the WordPress community. And you would get a planning tool on your website, a budget tool where you can also, of course, keep track of your budget and the support of the entire WordPress community.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the things that I think makes it hard for higher education to follow what's developing in coming from the WordPress Foundation is that this is really a collaboration of multiple teams, right? I saw in the training team chat the other day. This is on the WordPress Slack. In the training team, somebody was mentioning, hey, would it be useful to have reusable workshops on different topics where there's both a workshop and a facilitation guide so that someone could run that workshop on their own, and I immediately thought of campus because of who I am, right? We could have those and run those on our own campus, but I think they were also thinking more broadly. And so I see that it's happening in the training channels. It's happening in the meetup kind of channels. And so that can be kind of feel like you're drinking from a fire hose from some of us if you aren't in that Slack every day or you're not following all those different channels.
Yeah, the collaboration between teams is a huge props. In my experience, I'm gonna drop another link in the chat. The training team is the one responsible in charge of keeping updating and creating the learn.wordpress.org site. In there, regardless your level of collaboration or partnership with our programs, this is free, accessible. Anybody can use it. Teachers who are here today, if you spot any workshop, any class, anything that could be useful, feel free to grab it, use it, and share feedback. Also, this could be great. And also, you can find already workshop with the facilitator guides and steps to follow. So depending what you're interested in, this is the place to go for all free resources created by the WordPress community.
So that's the Campus Connect program, and I think we should move on because I really see kind of like three distinct initiatives coming out from the WordPress education team. You have the Campus Connect program, which is really trying to organize meetups and word camps, especially at the university. And then you're really focusing on trying to enable and create student clubs as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the club initiative and how this differentiates between other kind of WordPress meetups or other things that have been done in the past?
Of course, the idea of enabling campuses and students to create WordPress student clubs came while we were running these Campus Connect workshops, because we saw, well, first, in some cultures, I believe United States is a place where this is pretty common. You're used to having clubs on campus. From where I'm from in Italy, this wasn't a thing. They had to explain me what they meant by students club, but the idea is fantastic because we saw that trying to pushing students or younger generation to come to the meetups, WordPress meetups, and attend the meetups where also the average The average in age is like way grown-ups, more grown-ups than them. Sometimes students didn't feel like, okay, this is not the space for me, even though the communities are super open and welcoming. They would feel more comfortable running like where they already feel comfortable. So why shouldn't we be providing students a way to first feeling comfortable running WordPress events on campus, but moving from a top-down learning experience to a peer-to-peer experience. So we would have students co-working with other students or teaching other students how to do something or how to achieve something with WordPress, and also uh, having a chance to practice leadership, to practice event organization. So also practicing tons of transferable skills that then they can use in the future. Like it's completely spendable outside the university environment as well. So we launched this to also give students a way to create continuity between work done in class, the work or the experience had at a WordPress event, and then also be able to create create the WordPress community as they see it and in a way that is meaningful to them, instead of having me or you ad telling them, hey, this is for you. No, let's have them creating what they are looking for.
Interesting. So, I see this as kind of like a funnel. We have the big welcome many students through the WordPress Campus Connect. We have the WordPress clubs that you're hoping pop up on these campuses as well. And then you have this other program, the WordPress Credits program. And that's the one, of course, that you lead yourself. So I have a feeling we're going to get the hard sell here. Tell us a little about the WordPress Credits program and how does this program work for students? And what do you love about it?
Yeah. Yes, I was waiting for this moment as you anticipated. This program, this is my baby. Of course, I'm gonna try to hard sell this to everyone I talk to because, well, first, what is about? WordPress credits is referring to programs that we built to enable students to train tech and transferable skills by contributing to WordPress. So uh, it's not just about completing a course or learning a specific skills. We welcome students in the community, the contribution teams, and depending on what students are studying and also what type of careers they're thinking about, like the path they want to create for themselves, they would join a contribution team or multiple contribution teams, and for specific amount of hour, they would be contributing to the team. And when I say this is my baby, is because the first time I thought about like a similar program, it was during my onboarding with the WordPress community. I graduated ages ago in translation and interpreting, and I translated so many texts that nobody ever read, only my teacher. And then while I was onboarding to the community, I found out about the polyglots team. And like I was in shock. At that point, I thought, wow, we were translating things for 5 years. We had no idea that this existed and that we could have been actually translating something useful to like thousands of users worldwide almost instantaneously. And this could have been something that could have, of course, helped us training the translation skills, but also we would be helping a nonprofit program, and we would have built a curriculum because translations are there. They appear in your WordPress profiles. You can say, hey, I've translated this. And also we would have connected with professionals all around the world. So first time I thought about this was 2022. And finally, last year, an opportunity came up with the same university where I graduated from. So the Pisa University in Italy is we were going to organize a WordCamp, and they were giving us spaces to organize it. And so we started discussing, hey, how like how do you see piloting such program for students of translation to come and translate WordPress, and you would recognize the time invested in this type of work. So we piloted it with them, and then we adjusted the program, and then we launched this program for students of completely different majors. So depending on what they're studying, students would learn about WordPress as an open source, or what does it mean to contribute to an open source program, and of course they would learn WordPress skills. But then the most part of the program was built around 150 hours, but now we are testing also more condensed program or extended program, depending on the institution needs. But most of the time spent in the program, the students are contributing to WordPress in different ways. So
Yeah, could you give me some more examples? I know you've been working on a contributor guide where you can see those types of examples and that that's available on GitHub. But can you give me some examples of what types of projects might be available for students?
of course. Um, I'm gonna also share the link to the program page in the chat.
Hmm.
Right now, we have students, well, of course, let's say they're not the easiest, but the first one that we piloted translation. So we have students translating from English to their native languages, WordPress, plugins, themes. Then we have students contributing to the community team, connecting with their local community and meetup, and they help organize event, or they decide to organize event on campus. We have students joining the support team, and so they would be helping users with troubles in the forums. Depending on their native language, they would help like the support team in the language they feel more comfortable with. Then we have students of design who are helping event organizers with all design related needs they have.
Hmm.
And then also students developing or reviewing theme or join core team. It depends on first what they're interested in, and also what like specific skills, like level of technical skills that they may have. So
Yeah.
depending on what their situation, they could be contributing to different programs.
I have to be very honest with you. The type of things you were talking about at the end seem much more achievable to me. And I have a team of 5 interns that I work with. So when you start to say like, oh, they could be creating a poster for a meetup event that's happening or for a WordCamp that's happening that's upcoming, that's a small achievable project that a student could work on. My students, I train them to do peer support, one-to-one support, and we also trained them to run workshops. And so to build a workshop that they would deliver on campus, and then to share that workshop more broadly with the community after that's done, is again much more of the type of project I could see my students being able to do. Now, my students tend to be humanities majors, tend to be art majors. I do have a couple computer science students this year that are working through the program, but like I couldn't see them being on the plugin team or the theme team. So I really love that you're thinking about like contribution in a very broad way, because there's not too many students that I think of that would be like ready to participate in the Gutenberg project and with all the moving parts that it has and developing code or contributing in that way. But really around the community, I see that there's a really lot of potential there. In fact,
300%.
I just want to plug this and make this offer here while, everybody's watching. When I saw on the training channel yesterday, the idea floated that some WP credits or WordPress credits students might be trying to create reusable workshops. I said that would be awesome. I think that they should come and present the workshops to WP Campus and teach them once, and then we could give some feedback on them, and then they could get posted, and that could be a way to continue to engage with this community. What I attend the Pod conference every year, which is a professional development conference, and one of my favorite tracks is the track that we call the Workshop in a Box track, where someone demonstrates a workshop, but then also, oh, by the way, here are the slides, and here are the handouts, and here are the facilitation guides that you could go to. I would love to see that type of collaboration happening across all of the different campuses that are using WordPress, because I see a lot of people like in our audience right now are running multi-sites, are working, maybe they're a team of two or three, maybe there's a team of one. They're having a big resource of potential workshops and things that you could do, I think could be a real boon to this community, because these are the professionals that are trying to do this, across the United States.
And I want
That's
to
my
thank
pitch.
Anne. Thanks a lot, Anne McCarthy, for the links dropped there. So anybody interested can see everything which is currently in progress for like learning pathways that are being created for students as well. So, or any type of anybody who wants to learn more. So if you're curious, you can check it out.
So, let's keep talking about this. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing as you try to do outreach to universities and with students?
Well, there are a few, as you can expect, because this is something new. Uh, Already, like not many open source communities have tried to do this exactly same type of program. So the first challenge that we face is that many people we talk to, they don't get what we're saying. Basically, they don't know. Most of them don't know WordPress. Most of the people, like my first contacts, have been with people who maybe they know what WordPress is in a very generic way. So it takes a bit of time for them to understand why this could be very useful to the students and the institution. And then but this is also by practicing and having multiple conversation. I believe the entire team has become way more skilled and experienced to show in the first conversation why this is meaningful. And other types of challenges, well, first, all these programs are new. So they're not perfect yet, probably as everything in the world, perfection doesn't exist. So we think we have in our mind an idea and we think this is gonna work because of this, and then we test it and we get feedback and we have to adjust. So at first there was a lot of, on the side of like these multiple programs, a lot of adjustment to do in terms of or curriculum or infrastructures, and so make it is working smoothly. With students, there are two main challenges I am seeing right now. One, most of the students right now, we have more than 250, 300 students in the program from different regions, different languages, and different cultures. Most of them are not comfortable with proactive communication. So we were used to being in an open source community where everyone pings everyone and we figure out things together. Well, it turns out that people who are not used to it, they feel overwhelmed and scared about having this type of interaction. So we have to adjust either how we train them or the support that we give them at first. And another challenge is that for students who haven't understood exactly what they are walking into, the risk is to lose them. I'm gonna make a specific example. We have piloted the program with the university, then they decided to add it to a curriculum, to a specific degree they were launching, and students were pulled into the program, students and teachers pulled into the program without having a proper preparation for that. And so we started receiving a lot of like teachers were lost in the process, students as well. So also this was a great learning point also for me and the rest of the team. Say, okay, even if teachers might get very excited, let's make sure that we don't bring 100 students in the program without making sure that also teachers are comfortable explaining what is going on, and we can have at least one, better if multiple things with the students so they know what they are about to enter. Because I can assure you there is a lot of documentation, video walkthrough, and most of the people joining the program probably are not reading all the documentation and the resources available beforehand. So we need to be prepared for this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of us that are in this room today are really dedicated to embedding digital competencies throughout the curriculum. And that's what brings us to, that's why we are using a tool like WordPress. But I think that one of the tensions that we're continuing and will always rub up against is if we pitch ourselves as we're teaching WordPress. That's not very cool. And so what we have to really think about, and what I spend my time thinking about, are things like, what are the enduring competencies? What are the competencies that go across all of the technologies that would be doing WordPress? And when I look at other models of tools that do similar things, like outreach to students, creating workshops, digital literacies, along many of them, one of the key components is we're going to use a tool to teach you this lesson, but the lesson is some kind of enduring digital competency. We are going to be installing WordPress today, and I want to teach you the command line. And so we're going to use, WordPress CLI, and I'm going to teach you that WordPress CLI process to do that. But one of my goals here is I want to give you a little fluency as a student of how to navigate by the command line, how to move through different directories, how to orient yourself when you're working in this space. And this is something that has become more common. You're going to do this if you want to use Claude Code. It's also the same environment you want to be there. So we're seeing other technologies where you need to, and this is a basic digital literacy we are teaching you that will endure. And although we're using it with WordPress as a practice point, it's that kind of phrasing that I find myself doing all the time, saying, yes, we are using WordPress for this tool, but this is what you can take away with you. And I think that that's so important for all of us and what we've learned to do in higher ed to kind of justify the work that we want to do. And I wonder if there's a way for, this community to help sharpen that pitch as you go out and to invite more people, because I think it is a major problem. And I'm thinking about even the community that's assembled today. We are not uniform. I know Mary Isbell is going to be talking later on. She's one of our panelists. She and I share a love of OER and openly publishing resources and textbooks, right? And that might appeal to some of the librarians that are part of this group. Other people here said, "Oh, I'm from the careers office. I teach WordPress, but it's probably more tightly linked to like an e-portfolio initiative." And so that's really interesting is all of the different avenues we are coming from. But most of us aren't coming from the avenue of, it's actually my passion to teach WordPress, right? That it's kind of a side goal. And so I think that that's one of the things that we have to think about as we stay in communication with our universities, as we stay in communication to each other, is kind of what we titled this day as, what are we teaching when we teach WordPress? What are those goals and where are we going? And so I'm going to continue to kind of hammer on that feedback. I gave it yesterday in the training channel, and I'm going to give it whenever I get the opportunity to speak to the education team because I think that that's important. It's gonna lead to a higher rate of success when we're talking to, our colleagues.
Yeah, what you said, yeah, I can relate 300% to what you mentioned. And I agree that also it's not just about being more successful at pitching this type of programs, but also it is true that we can intentionally provide students with a broader learning opportunity for WordPress credits specifically. When with the team we were building the steps, we thought about, okay, what exactly action or learning points we can give the students so they can also practice, well, communication. We put in the program intentional steps for them to learn how to communicate with stakeholders, how to write weekly updates on their work, how, well, to train presentation skills. So we ask them as a deliverable at the end of the program to record a presentation on their journey. We put in there many transferable skills because maybe regardless what they're studying, maybe they will decide not to work with WordPress or not even to work in a tech world. But there are so many skills that we can help them training by using our community, our spaces, our courses that then can be spendable in 10,000 different ways. And I see that Mary asked a question in the chat. Is it okay if I go ahead and
Oh
answer
yeah,
it?
so what she
Okay.
said is has WordPress credits been structured as an internship program? I'm imagining that might be work at my institution.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. The program per se has been built to, so we are able to run it as an internship, or it can be connected to an in-class course and used by the teachers to have the student doing practice work. And so it depends on the institution needs.
Mhm.
For internships, one thing that is important to specify as we run it with the WordPress Foundation. The WordPress Foundation is a nonprofit and the work won't be for the benefit of a business company. We can't pay the students. So as long as this is a format that your institution is interested with, perfect. If it's not this format, I would still recommend to reach out to me and we can discuss, because our goal is to provide institution with a format which is scalable, repeatable, and in the long term, we would love to see schools and universities to run contribution, like to embed WordPress contributions to their program without even having to ask the WordPress Foundation or having to submit an application.
Yeah, and just to follow up on Mary's question, that you provide a curriculum for those students. They get kind of like an what introduction to open source course that they kind of have to take, and you provide them with a mentor as
Yeah,
well, right?
correct. We have a pool of mentors from the WordPress community. All of them are volunteers based in different parts of the world and experience with different contribution teams. So we connect group of students with a mentor, and for the long, like let's say the traditional program, 150 hours, they're gonna have one weekly sync with the mentors and the rest of the communication async. And the mentors, and then of course on Slack they can ping and talk to any contributors of the ecosystem. So they're able to also learn from more experienced contributors. And the idea is to help them connect with the people behind the screen, because of course there are so many contributions that can be done without interacting with other humans. We don't want that. We want the students also to feel that they are part of an international global community, and also having the chance to build relationships, and relationships that can become mm, very meaningful for their personal lives, their future career opportunities. Who knows? So we saw that connection as like in the your communities, our communities, any communities is what really changes everything. And so yeah.
So you're getting some chats happening in there. And I'm going to give you some
Sure.
context about who's speaking. I see Christopher Stein, who works at Borough of Manhattan Community College. All right, so is another one of these universities that has a large multi-site installation already using WordPress with their students, already embedded into some programs. Like I know their education program all builds portfolios on WordPress as part of the program. He says we've had success with some local nonprofits and paying students with the federal work study monies and then having
Nice.
them serve local not-for-profits. He's going to look in to see what that would look like with a larger not-for-profit like WordPress.org. So, this might be a connection that would be worth following up on. And then I see a little bit back and forth between Jody Rosen and Mary Isbell, who we're going to hear from later on the panel. And these are all people from different communities that all have their own open lab. They all have their own WordPress multi-site, are already working with students, and they're kind of saying, "Hey, let's talk to each other to see how we could already use our internships with a program like this."
That would be awesome. I've just dropped in the chat the email address you can reach me out to,
Mhm.
and please, I'd love to hear from you, learn how your practices or internship or programs in general already work. Also, because I'm new to the um, US US education system, so every every conversation that I have on this topic is fantastic food for thoughts and learnings for me. And then we can figure it out the best way to bring WordPress even more to your students and bring students into the community.
Now, I know that you are in Spain. What time is it right
Yes.
now for you?
Uh, it's the three, how do you say it in English? It's 10 to 4 p.m.
10 to
Like,
4 p.m.
yes,
Okay, so at
3:50.
the end of our session, we were gonna have just like a half-hour hangout session. Maybe that would be a good time for you to just network with some of these people who have come and can talk a little bit more if you're able to. I know that's getting quite late.
Absolutely. No, no, absolutely. I made sure that I had all the time needed to attend the event until the end. Also because I'm very interested in the next guests and panelists. So I want to learn and not just selling my programs, right?
Yeah, I know many of us run internship programs and we kind of have our own set of goals with those. My interns like are working on supporting my students, building our own training materials. And I wonder how I could integrate kind of WordPress credits in the same way and say like, hey, your final project at the end of the semester, you're going to do all the stuff you have to do for me throughout the semester, but one of your final projects is going to be to contribute a workshop back to the larger WordPress community beyond SUNY Oneonta, or make a presentation beyond SUNY Oneonta, or be part of one of these teams. And if that would be kind of a possibility in order to let that be like a stepping stone, because I've really found that the students need small amounts of time with frequent check-ins with a lot of deliverables in between. Like we can't push off and wait to the end because this, like you said, the students are not always very proactive. Some are. I don't want to make generalities, but like in general, like you have to have that weekly touch point. You have to be, giving them assignments. You have to be giving them feedback. You have to get, it takes a while to get a student rolling, right? And so I think that talking how we're structuring our programs, what they're required of, where are we pulling in training from external sources. Those are the types of things that would be really valuable to share in this community. Okay, I want you to brag now. Give me a
I'm
win.
ready.
Give me something that went exceptionally well right from the very beginning within the education program.
Only
We
one
talked about
win?
the challenges.
I
Enough of
could
that.
brag I could brag 3 hours. No, I'm gonna pick one, maybe two. Wait. Well, first, it is since the very first pilot, since the moment we were bringing a student to a program and we didn't have infrastructures or anything, it was clear that students, even those who had no idea of what WordPress is, they find this experience. I'm talking about WordPress credits, but also about workshops, Campus Connect, and the student club. They love the idea of being able to feel that they belong in a tech world, even if they are not studying any technical related thing, they have no technical backgrounds. So my dream was to open doors for students who thought that their careers was only going to be this job or this other job, and to show them, hey, no, if you want, you can own your presence in the space and you can get hired by international companies, or you can travel the world and talk to events, and you can create a network of people worldwide, even if you can't physically leave your house. So this, for me, you can say it. I believe that my smile goes from ear to ear. This is like students are getting this. On top of this, they are learning a lot. The feedback received about we have feedback from students and for WordPress credits in 3 different moments of the program. And we asked them about what is working, what is not working, and how meaningful they feel their work has been. And all of them are sharing among the wins, that the fact that what they do is almost immediately useful and available for people worldwide. These give them a sense of fulfillment they usually don't experience when studying and completing exams. So I could go on and on and on, but another example is again the collaboration. When I'm sponsored by one company, but there are many other companies who see the importance of not just them reaching new audiences, but seeing like opening doors for students who the day of tomorrow they might become, I don't know, like the new tech lead in the space, and to opening doors for them is so um, it's so fulfilling. And so seeing different companies collaborating, sponsoring, contributors. So there are always people working on the program, mentoring students. This is magical. And now I'm gonna stop. But if you want a longer list of me bragging about things, I can I can email you all.
We'll set it as a follow-up. Um, you asked me to ask you, so I'm gonna do it. What hasn't worked quite well the first time? What are some of the experiments that you're still iterating on, or you have ideas of how to fix them for the next time you run them?
Yes, yes, I wanted you to ask this because also let's like be real. Uh, there are like every time that a program or a product they launch, we have to test, adjust. Something that is not working yet perfectly is where having all students, because this doesn't apply. This is not a challenge that all students have, but many students and more those who are not native English speakers, they it takes a long time for them to jump into Slack and the channels and communicating with the contribution teams. They would ping their mentor privately and then be very self-aware of like self-conscious about everything. So they would rather ask the mentors, can you please ask yourself this question to this team representative, for example, instead of them connecting and communicating. This is a huge challenge because it is like also it's the importance of the community of collaborating with different people. If you can overcome the fear of writing a message in a public channel, your experience is going to be different in a sense. So we are working a lot with students and with teachers to first mm, making sure that we prepare them for what would be the perfect experience and what would be required from them if they want to live like the 100% great experience. And another part is coordination with schools who are not involved into like the day by day of their students, because in some cases we have schools whose teachers are very connected with the students, they know our programs, and they can be also our representatives, like the WordPress representative with the students. And in other cases, there are schools who send students our way, and students feel completely lost because they didn't have a proper preparation. None of these challenges is the end of the world. We're learning and we are adjusting, so we are changing the way we prepare schools and students before the first onboarding. We are working on launching a series of online workshops for students and mentors and teachers. So there is always there will always an opportunity to fill any gaps that can pops up when we don't coordinate everything with the students every time, because it would be insane. We have to have point of contact at the schools, but all of this is uh, I don't know. I smile because there are good challenges. So we are learning from this. And also, if any of the people here, they have experience in or running similar program or coordinating onboarding flows, this would be also something that I would love to learn from you on how we can adjust the way we work so we ensure that our volunteers don't can face a reasonable workflow, and that the experience for the students is smooth and clear at every step.
Yeah, no, I mean that I don't think that there is a magic fix for that. You know, my students, we work in Scrum style, and so we keep my 6 students, we keep a Scrum board active with all the different tasks that they're doing broken out and how they collaborate together. And one of the things that I have always required my students to do is like at the end of the day when they work or the end of the shift when they work, they have to send a message to each
Okay.
other, sharing, "Oh, here's what I worked on today." And I specifically asked them, "You must ask for help." You said, "Hey, could you look this over and tell me if you have any feedback?" Or, "I'm pretty happy with how this looks visually, but I'm still having trouble with the wording. Could you offer me some suggestion?" Because I want them to get used to reaching out to each other. I want them to get used to asking for help. And I also want them to get used to controlling the feedback and signaling to their peers what they're looking for feedback on and what they're not looking for feedback on. Right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
looking for comments now on how the visuals yet. I'm only looking at the data structure, or I'm only looking at and to help guide them, because I think that's a real communication competency. And let me tell you, it is March 24th, so I've had those students for about 20 weeks so far, which should be like 50 opportunities to practice that procedure, and we're still working on it. You know, so like I mean this is the type of thing that training the students to commute in asynchronous environments is a competency, and it is a slow thing. And I think that we can keep sharing about what we're doing and what's successful. And I think that one of the things that helps for me is to have different size communities that they're posting to, so that they want to get that mentor feedback, they want to have that one-on-one. And so like getting students together in small groups So like, hey, this is where the students that are participating in the training channel are looking at. Let them all collaborate in a smaller space. Make sure that that's require that to happen weekly, and then once in a while on a schedule. Okay, it's time to push what you're doing back to the training channel. Once we give you your positive affirmation and small feedback, now this is ready for the larger community and giving them spaces to like, okay, I'm comfortable in this small group. Now I'm comfortable in this larger group. Because when you go to WordPress Slack and you see like, wow, there are 3,000 people in this training channel.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. Even if you're not a student, so you are like a grown up with many years of working experience. Uh, this is a practice that I believe most of us we keep doing before going like into the world and ask for feedback. We ask for feedback to like a smaller environment where we feel more comfortable, and then we launch ourselves out there. So it makes sense. But as you say, it is a process. It takes a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, the final question, I know that we're going to have the hangout later on where we're going to be able to, rub elbows a little bit more. This is webinar style, so it's us broadcasting to our community, but later on we'll have a separate room that we go into. There's more of the traditional Zoom room and we can just kind of chat back and forth and talk and swap ideas. But what is the best way to get started with the WordPress education programs, particularly for people that are very familiar with WordPress and maybe even have programs on their own campus already?
Yeah, super, super easy question. Thanks. I like ending a conversation with an easy one. I shared in the chat the handbook. It's one link you'll find there, the handbooks for all three programs. And in each part, there will be also the link to either the application form or submission form, depending what you're more interested in. But I also want to invite again everyone if they have different type of questions, doubts that are not answered in the handbook, or just reaching out to me at education@wordpressfoundation.org to mm, figure out what they would like to go, and then I'd be happy to direct them to specific or documentation piece or people they can connect in the community.
Okay, so we're just going to do a slight change of programming. I don't see our presenters that were scheduled to go on at 11 o'clock. What we're going to do is take just a 3-minute break. We're going to get started back again at 11:05, so everybody can stretch their legs. And if our presenters come in at that point, we'll go right with the schedule that we had broadcast. And if not, we'll move our panel up. And they said they're already ready to go at 11:05. Thanks, Mary, Tom, and Austin for being gamers. So we'll make that audible call if we need to. But everybody, take a quick break. We'll see you back at 11:05.
See you soon. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's 11:05, and that means that it is time to pick back up. Um, I think we are going to be moving ahead with that little rearrangement that Ed mentioned earlier. We are going to be moving forward with our panel. So thank you to our panelists, Mary, Tom, and Austin, for being flexible with our programming. Before we fully get back into the swing of things, I want to remind you all that we have another summit coming up in June. Uh, we will be it will be rollbacks, recovery, and rebuilding lessons learned from what went wrong on Thursday, June 11th. Everyone is welcome to register, and we are also putting out a call for proposals for anyone who wants to give a short talk about a project that maybe didn't go according to plan and what you all learned, what you all took away, and what the community can learn as well, because sometimes you can learn just as much from failure as from success. And again, this was a topic that was requested by community members at our last summit. So if you have anything that you would like to see in the future, please let us know, because we want to make sure that what we are doing is helpful and relevant and interesting to our community members. Okay. I think maybe I'm a little bit ahead of the game. So I will just take this opportunity again to say thank you to all of our volunteers who are putting their time and their energy and their expertise into this event today, and into all of the work that WP Campus does every day. We are a nonprofit organization, and you guys are really what makes all of this possible. So particular thank you to our speakers today, Tom, Mary, Austin, and Isota. It is so great to have you all. And with that, let's get started. I will quickly share my screen because I made slides and I forgot to use them earlier. I'm so sorry. But just here you can see our the headshots that I badgered our presenters for, so I would hate to not use them. Welcome everybody to Open Pedagogy with Open Source, WordPress in the Classroom. We will be highlighting something that Ed and Isota talked about, was that WordPress is often a tool that we use for other ends. We're not teaching WordPress itself, but we're using WordPress to teach. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, just the many ways that people are using WordPress as a tool for their educational projects. So our amazing panelists today are Austin Mason, Mary Isbell, and Tom Woodward. Let me introduce them to you now. Austin Mason is the Director of Digital Arts and Humanities and the Senior Lecturer in History for Carleton College. He uses WordPress both in his own teaching as part of his history, experimental archaeology, and digital arts and humanities courses, and with the wider school as he fosters digital scholarship projects and pedagogy on campus. Mary Isbell is an associate professor of English at the University of New Haven. Her research focuses on 19th century literature and culture, narratology, scholarly text encoding, and open educational practices. She also manages Open Lab at the University of New Haven, and she's the project lead for WonderCat, an experimental alternative to reading lists in courses and recommendation algorithms in the real world. Her recent book, Searching for Wonder, was published on her university's Pressbooks network, and all of these projects rely on WordPress. Tom Woodward is the Director of Learning Spaces and Technologies at Middlebury College. He's been using WordPress in K-12 and higher ed for more than 20 years. His experience ranges from large multi-site management to the development of custom themes and plugins to meet specific educational needs. Thank you all for joining us. Now, I've worked with all three of you. I know a bit about your work. You've each used WordPress in many different ways and contexts, but the audience may not. So to give them a clear picture, I'm going to have each of you give a quick lightning talk, 5-ish minutes, about your work before we move into the discussion. And audience members, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and I'll bring them up in our conversation once everyone is done talking, giving you that context. Austin, would you kick us off?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Pilot. Hello, everybody. I am Austin Mason. As Pilot said, I work at Carleton College. I've been using WordPress in my teaching since, I don't know, 2012, 2013, probably. I've probably made hundreds of WordPress sites over the years, various durations and experimental natures up to like big kind of ongoing projects. as Pilot said, I also support the use of WordPress and other digital technologies and web platforms on campus as part of a collaborative team at Carleton. We call it euphemistically either a three-legged stool of support or like a distributed collaborative model of support. As basically, I'm in our humanities center as kind of a faculty representative, and then we have an academic technology unit with M. Palencia. One of the people there is on the call right now. Hello, M. And then our libraries, our librarian for digital scholarship is also part of that. So we have like libraries, academic technology, and kind of faculty representation supporting digital work across campus with a bunch of student workers that we have trained for peer support and also for kind of research associates and teaching assistants for classroom use. So that's kind of our model. So between supporting other people's work and also experimenting in my own, I have used WordPress in a lot of different ways. That was kind of our brief for this, is like, what are the many ways that you've used WordPress? So I'm just going to give kind of an overview. If I can, Pilot, I'll share and just show a couple of examples. And then I'm happy to talk about more of them. But basically my own use, like I've built my own sites for courses where I just want students to kind of, instead of handing me a paper that only I read, just practice doing scholarship in public. And so just basically a single site where people are posting there. So let me, yeah, I see it now. I will grab this. Can you all see that? Okay.
See it just fine.
Great. So this is an example. I teach a course on experimental archaeology and experiential history. And here we've just basically got a simple structure where students, we do a lab every week on a Thursday. And then on the Friday, they have to initially put up a quick student journal that we keep private. So that's just like their quick reflections. And then one of the lab groups has to present data. They have to gather data from all of the different lab groups that are doing and put up lab data reports that are public. And then those are kind of grouped into summaries that students do once or twice a term and put those up. And so we have those summaries kind of from the student perspective, it's like narrow, restricted up to public. But from the navigation perspective on the homepage, you just have all of these kind of direct links to the summaries, the public side, and then you can drill back down. So this would be for a lab on blacksmithing, and they're using, galleries, images here, and we have some like graphing plugins so that they can practice data reporting, and then using like query loop blocks to gather the data that fed into that going forward. So that's one example of how I've used this. They kind of contribute on the back end, but they're just authors. So there's very little like, I just give them a kind of couple page document saying, this is how you contribute to this site. But there's not much about WordPress guts that really they learn in this. It's just a useful platform. Kind of a slightly more advanced level, I've helped develop and sometimes co-taught a course, kind of a history and future of the book course as part of our digital arts and humanities program. And for that, the student's final project is a kind of a pilot digital edition of a text with multiple variants. And so we've used WordPress, a multi-site in that, to be able to have them do some more interesting things with some plugins that allow them to kind of, use some tech tools, but not have to learn any fancy, TEI or actual coding or anything in order to do digital editions. And so we basically have an overall site, and with a multi-site, I basically set this up as a template that has a little about page that they have to customize, and then some of their homework assignments they put here. And then we have the edition here. And so this is kind of set up with some help text for them on how to put things together. And then we just clone this for every student in the class at the beginning as the multi-site, so they have their own version that they then put their content into. So that's one where we want them to get a little more tech involved in the class, but it's still, they're not actually installing WordPress or doing anything like that. The next level of kind of technical difficulty, I direct our digital arts and humanities minor, and we have kind of a gateway course and then a capstone course for the structure for that. And so this is really kind of teaching more about doing DH work and really understanding, getting kind of under the hood of various technologies, not accepting black boxes is kind of the philosophy of this intro course called Hacking the Humanities that I teach once or twice a year. And so right in the first week of this class, I do a kind of WordPress 101. And so this, instead of having like a Moodle site, I mean, I do have a Moodle site to give them private feedback, but basically all of the whole class is kind of on a public website. So this is where I put up all the lesson plans. They're added as authors here to be able to do their kind of homework assignments, submit them as blog posts. And then I also kind of gradually teach them how to do more and more, install their own site, learn how to be an administrator on WordPress from the back end. And then for the final project, they have to do some original research, usually with campus archives, and then put together a final project about that that's often in WordPress, most often in WordPress. So just here are some examples from last fall. And so this, they would actually just kind of install, design, do everything for the WordPress site. We have Reclaim hosting. We have Domain of One's Own program on campus that M on the call administers, and that has been super helpful for this kind of work, right? To be able to self-host and have all of that functionality. We can get, this was a really good project where they took some original letters that hadn't been transcribed or digitized in our archives, and they made a nice website with their own transcriptions of it and some little help text paginated there. So that's kind of a next level. And then for the end of that minor, for the capstone at the other end of the minor as seniors, we use WordPress primarily. Again, people don't have to use WordPress, but most do, to have people look back over all the courses they took for the minor, grab all the kind of digital artifacts that they've created, and then figure out how to kind of present them for audience of use to them. So if they're applying to grad schools, this could be like a portfolio for grad school applications or for careers. If I scroll all the way to the bottom, you might see a familiar name there. Pilot was one of our first members of this initial ePortfolio group, but just to show you kind of an example of what these look like. These are nice. They have full access to all the theming. They don't usually have full kind of backend cPanel access for customization, but they can do everything from the administrative interface, right? And do all the design work that they want to do and kind of figure out some categories how to present themselves with their best foot forward. And so then the final thing I'll just say is we also we have these student workers that we train to support projects, and we also have interns, kind of like what Ed was discussing. We have some interns who we do train to do development work. And that development work, because we support a lot of WordPress sites, we also support a lot of Mecca sites on campus. We tend to be training them in kind of content management systems on a LAMP stack, like kind of this kind of thing. And WordPress, because there's so much such a great community there, because there's so many resources and tutorials, we usually start them on that for training how to do it before we go to something like Omeka that has a smaller community and less robust documentation. And so one of the things that we've trained them with in our GitHub organization, we have this just like heads up plugin that basically adds an info box on the administrative dashboard to pull information from the database about like how many posts there are and authors and stuff like that, right? So this every time we train in new interns, we just get them to kind of tweak this a little bit, figure out how to query the database, do some of that work to figure out how plugins work in this context. And then occasionally we also do some child theming. So for example, during COVID, the Humanities Center decided it would be good to make kind of like an Urban Dictionary clone of like some new terms that were coming up in that crazy year. And so in order to kind of try to get this to look more like a Urban Dictionary type thing, we just ended up making a child theme for that with some plugins. And there too, our interns were integral to that work. So at various levels, we were just kind of playing around with the WordPress format. And again, having Reclaim hosting the Domain of One's Own platform, it really makes a lot of that possible. So I'll stop there. Happy to talk about anything else, but I will hand the mic over.
This is awesome, Austin. Thank you. I also did not expect that you're going to put me on blast like that. But yeah, there's a lot of great different ways that you guys are using WordPress at Carleton. And we will get back to that in the discussion phase. Mary, do you want to go next?
Sure. I am so excited to learn about everything everyone shared already. And I'll just kind of linger a little on the English professor's perspective on using this because I want to be Austin. Like I'm trying to build actually toward the partnerships that would make possible a team of students who would do this sort of thing. And Isoda, your presentation is helping me think about that too. But I'll share a little bit more like the thought process behind why an English professor would wind up managing a WordPress multi-site so that these sorts of things are possible. And in part, it's because I think about the challenges that I face in the classroom. And I'm at an institution where students are primarily career focused, professionally minded. It's not a liberal arts institution per se, but I teach in the liberal arts. And so students come into my classes because these are required courses in the core curriculum, and they might not always bring the most enthusiasm to the task of learning about academic inquiry and writing, or some of the other literature courses I teach. And so what I've learned over the years, and I've been using WordPress with teaching for about as long as Austin has, though. Yeah, probably. I started my position in 2014. And the second I got on campus, I said, can you give me a cPanel so I can make WordPress sites? Because that wasn't in place already. And then when I learned about OpenLab, I started to use that a little bit more. But the big things that were priorities for me were maximum agency for students. And also giving students a real audience, right? Helping them see that the things they were writing were for an actual audience. But then I've learned that I also needed to scaffold the amount of publicness that they could have, right? They needed to be able to practice small with each other and then gradually prepare for that. So I'm going to share a couple of things that I've done and kind of talk through how those priorities have factored in here. So as long as I've been teaching with WordPress, I've also been teaching with Wiki education. And so this is like the first instance of what I wanted to do with a WordPress site. It was just a course website that allowed me to show my assignments and activities, and also allowed me to, for students who wanted, and this was important for like the agency piece, I didn't require everyone to make their work as a blog post, but if students wanted to not make a Word document, but instead make a blog post on our website, they had the option to do that. And so then this site actually allows you to see some of the featured projects that students did. And I want to show you this one because it was an interesting kind of playing around with also Wiki Education. So you can see here the Wiki Education dashboard. I had been teaching with it for a long time. And let me actually go back here and show you. This is an activity that I did where we did the Wikipedia policies training for anyone who teaches with Wiki Education. It's something that they manage on their website. But I made a duplicate of it and I had students annotate it using Hypothesis. And so I was using open licensing in order to make this available to them in a different format. And so the fact that it was an open educational resource over here, I could remix and modify it over here. What that manifested in is this, student at the end of the semester, I also wanted to give them an option to, instead of improving a Wikipedia article, remixing a Wikipedia article according to their own desires. And so this student was really interested in Barbara Walters, but didn't want to just make that article on Wikipedia better. So she was doing a ton of work to remix, frame it the way she wanted to, and give proper attribution statements at the end for what she was doing. So it's almost like I want you to see that I was using Wikipedia and WordPress at the same time and helping students see that those things could happen. So enter OpenLab, which made my life so much easier. I was able to allow other colleagues at my university and students and staff to make WordPress sites as well. Once we had this, almost immediately after we had it, and I have talked to the Reclaim folks about this when I talked about my history of using Reclaim. The pandemic happened. I feel like it's an important part of all of our journeys with WordPress. So this was what it made possible for me was we were offering a course during the summer to help students want to come to college, even though COVID was like not that it was making it hard to imagine it. So we had faculty teaching multiple sections of this course during the summer using this same webinar format. And all of the faculty profiles are here. And it facilitated this possibility, which I think Austin was also mentioning, which is that this is actually the page from, yeah. That was the landing page from OpenLab. But it facilitates multiple sections that are happening at the same time, collectively sharing their work with each other, which is changing even how I'm thinking right now about some interdisciplinary ideas I'm having on campus, where I'd actually like to have courses that are taught by faculty and other disciplines linked with humanities courses. They don't have to happen at the same time, but we can be sharing work with each other and building a website that kind of shares that out. So that's really exciting to me. I wanted to mention that Pressbooks, which is built on top of WordPress, it's a plugin that constrains it, allowed me to do something similar to what Austin's talking about. So I was so excited when you're describing like you can do digital editing without learning TEI and XSLT. That was the experiment that I did here with students, and I had students contributing over multiple sections of, and this is kind of weird, a first year writing course. So students were contributing notes, annotations on an edition that we were building iteratively across multiple semesters. And we were publishing that on Pressbooks. And then I finally realized that instead of a course, so I think about this course over here as kind of an evergreen course. Students would join it, but it stayed the same. It wasn't like a new course every time. But here's where I started to realize that I really want each semester to be a collaborative endeavor to build a website. And what I learned here was the way to help students learn to make their work public. So what you're seeing is the final version of the site, but this site stayed private for the whole semester. In fact, one of my questions for you, Austin, is going to be that I saw you had a certain section where there were things that stayed private on a site that was public already, I think, and maybe was public all semester. What I did is I had a private site all semester. Students could make choices about what they shared with each other. So they could either make their post private just to me or public to their classmates. And they wrote the same kind of assignment iteratively, so they got more comfortable with it. And at the end of the semester, they could, as the final project, decide which of those pieces they wanted to refine and prepare for true publication when the site turned public at the end. And this has really been tremendous for me. I'm surprised always by how much more students write when they have that real audience. So I'll just quickly go through, like, this is another book. This is the book that I wrote, which talks about essentially the pedagogy behind this course and this way of thinking about engaging students. And then because of this, I started to want to do other things with WordPress. So this is me with a team that includes Tom Woodward, who's actually helped me. Look at my theme files, guys. They're on GitHub. I actually made my own child theme, which I never would have dreamed of doing when I first started. And actually, Austin, as you're describing what you do with students, I'm like, I'm there. And if I do it with students, then I can do this even more, right? I can make child themes, etc. But what we're doing here is essentially establishing an open pedagogy project that anyone can contribute to. And so students in the class can contribute to this database. We're actually using the REST API to pull all of the things in our database into network graphs and other visualizations. And we're combining it with my favorite thing, Wikidata, to sort of bring in some interesting things about the creative works that students put into the database. So I'm kind of racing through. I think that's all I want to show you. This is an up close view of what you can do in Shiny by like focusing in on a particular experience. And I'm going to stop there because I feel like I didn't even pay attention to how long I was talking.
You're okay. I think we got plenty of time.
Okay.
Yeah. I have been trying to keep up with links in the chat. Some of the project specific links, Mary, I wasn't able to find. But so you don't have to share them right now, but if you can get them to me later, I'll include them in the resources after when we send everything out. Tom, do you want to take us home?
Yeah, give me a time check though. What am I trying to end by here, Pilot?
Um,
5 minutes?
yeah, let's say 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna try and keep an eye on the clock here. I'm starting at 11:30. I'm writing it down. Because I'm bad. I can get carried away too. But I mean it has been beautiful seeing people get excited about this. So as my bio said, I realized I've been working with WordPress for more than 20 years, which is kind of disgusting in certain ways. It makes me feel so unbelievably old. But in that time, I think, I went from like WordPress trying to convince people it's not just for like cat diaries was the joke people would always tell at the beginning, and focus on the idea like it's just a way to write stuff on the internet. And it still is that. And I think an unbelievably flexible, versatile way to do it. And what I try and stress for people is like it's got a low threshold to entry, so we can get people up and running without a whole lot of technical skills required. But the top is super high. We can create custom plugins and themes. We can get into the technology stack. We can use the API and consume it with other applications. Like we have a huge amount of flexibility in that way to create both the skills that we want and the actual applications that we want. And that kind of pushing back and forth is what is really exciting to me. And working with Mary and having her do the coding was like one of the beautiful things. Like I love that because that is one thing that WordPress has done for me. It's put the power in my hands. History major, no technical background. I slowly learned this stuff over time as I wanted to do more and more adventurous things. And so when I can have faculty members see that, when I can have students see that and start to see like, "Oh, I can do this little shaping here, but if I learn this, I'll be able to do this much more about what I want." And that's also one of the balancing acts I think we do as people trying to welcome people into this space is going, all right, what's the right fit? Are they best served on a multi-site where they just kind of take the plugins and themes that are given and they're doing it at this level and that's good for them right now, and maybe down the line we'll move them someplace else if the needs require? Or are we rolling them into an individual install where we're going to do more customization maybe for them? Um, and then it's kind of this snowball effect, but you're at each time you can move them through these places to get them at that right spot. And what those places are, changes for different people at different times. And has I think like that was one of our arguments from the beginning is the content's highly portable. It's an open source product. The likelihood of you using it outside of education is very high. If you're a faculty member and you go someplace else, the likelihood of being able to have access to it at that institution also very high. And if you don't, it's cheap and easy to run on your own server. So right now at Middlebury, I am operating with a domain of one's own through Reclaim Hosting. So that's the kind of cPanel installs that people have. We have a Campus Press multi-site. Um, that's kind of our WordPress offerings. And then we have a couple people who run individual installs places. So, and just to point you at like when I try and talk to people about diversity, I show them some old stuff. Like this is old Anthropology 101 by Mike Wesch. Some of you might remember this from back in the dawn of time, but this was an anthropology professor at Kansas State who went with WordPress early and has still continued on, kind of keeping this site up years and years later. Um, and it's just kind of fun to see like how he attacks it versus this site, which is Digital Histology, which is a VCU um, histology professor that we worked with to create something really customizable that he then took. Because I mean, here's a thing that happened at VCU. I had 36,000 sites on a WordPress multi-site when I worked there. And then in the 5 years since, they decided to shut that down. So like all those things institutionally went away, but people who wanted their stuff were able to transfer it out and continue on in ways that worked for them with individual grants, their own funds, whatever. But when you're trying to talk about longevity, you can't always rely on the institution. And knowing for things like WordPress, I don't have to have this high dollar server infrastructure. I can run it on this simple LAMP stack. I've got lots of places I can put it. I've got lots of programmers who understand WordPress that might be able to help me. I've got this huge community, plugins, themes, etc., support stuff. Some of the things that Sada was talking about, like that global reach too, I think is increasingly important. So there's some good and bad in VCU shutting that stuff down. Bad, it kind of hurts me. Years of my life were gone. but good in that we really proved the case that the people who wanted their stuff were able to do things with it. And I think I am at 5 minutes.
You are came in right on time. Um, thank you, Tom. Yeah, there's so many different places and we could take the conversation. There's so many different ways to talk about and think about WordPress. Uh, you actually, when we were like thinking about and prepping for the session, you were the one who really put it into perspective for me of how do we talk about WordPress? Well, it can be so many different things that that's a very hard way to, it's a very hard thing to nail down. I have said to all three of you behind the scenes, and I'm saying it now, I'm really hoping that this session can mostly be a discussion between you three. And I have questions and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat to be fly on the wall, but I think that's when we were prepping, seeing what you guys were coming up with and just talking back and forth was really magical to me. So I have some stuff to kick us off and get us started, but just feel free to take the conversation wherever you want to go with it. I say, having immediately lost my tabs with all of the questions that I had. One thing actually that would be a place that we could get started is I think all three of you have sort of touched on what you have at your institution and maybe the LMS versus what you are doing outside the LMS. So, Austin, you have a Moodle course. You have a Moodle course for the one course that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, but you also have that separate WordPress site. Mary, you have your Open Lab as opposed to maybe the
Canvas.
broader LMS.
We have Canvas, yeah.
Yeah. And Tom, I know that this is something that you have thought about as well. What are the affordances of working in WordPress versus in sort of a more cut down LMS? Let's start there.
The biggest one for me is just that the LMS feels largely passive, right? It feels like largely a way to push information either from the instructor to the students or have the students in very limited ways either submit assignments or maybe contribute to a discussion forum. But like, I mean, there are ways in Moodle is also open source. There are like various different things that you can do with it, but it's a lot kind of harder and normal users, like at the administrative level, campus wide, some changes can be made, but like at the individual user level, it's a lot harder to do those things. So for me, just the flexibility of something like WordPress, where the students can actually like take a lot more control and responsibility and make design choices, right? And not just think about content, but think about audience and how they're displaying that information, and how they're, categorizing like taxonomy issues and like linking different information. All of that is just a level that you can't reach within just the LMS.
Yeah, I'll add to that and just say that I think about the way that I wanted our faculty, I wanted me, but I wanted all of our faculty to show off what they were doing. Like I just wanted it to be visible that they were teaching incredible classes. And if nothing else, if you could just make your course materials available, that's why I was pushing at the beginning to just like, here's my syllabus and here's my assignments, because I think it's magic what I do with these assignments. Like I want people to see them and I learn a lot from other people's assignments. So actually, Ed mentioned in the comments, and I want to throw this in, that we might have not defined open pedagogy, and I might have flown right past the notion of Creative Commons licensing and OER, but that was simultaneously the thing I was learning while I was using WordPress, which that this is public, yes, but it's also openly licensed. I want you, other faculty who see what I'm doing in this class, to take my exact assignment language. And that's kind of always been the culture in academia with assignments anyway, but you can clearly indicate that you want people to use it that way. And in OpenLab, even what's cool is the whole site can be cloned within your network, right? So, and you can do that in other ways, like Pressbooks and enables cloning. And you can definitely copy sites across even different Open Lab instances if you wanted, or WordPress multi-site instances. But mostly it was about I want people to be able to see the magic, and then an additional benefit, as Austin's pointing out, of not only like students making their work public, but like collaboratively building something. I just don't see a way to do that. And honestly, like discussion board forums, yikes. So many professors think that that is generating genuine conversation. And I am so sorry, but it's not. Like there's a requirement that you do this before you respond in this way. I've been a learner in the Creative Commons training actually uses Canvas, right? I loathe writing in those environments. It feels too, there's no agency, right? And that's where what's taken away. Sorry, a rant.
Oh, and I think what we talk about here a lot is like continuums of both public and private and control and choice. And I think that's back in the old days, we frequently like cast Blackboard as like the worst thing in the world. Like that was the villain to WordPress back in the day. And since then, because of lots of stuff, yeah, it's still evil. But but as I try and be mature about it, like the idea that people have choice and control when they want, and there's this spectrum where people can kind of go, across all these tools, because there are a lot of faculty members who just want the LMS. They want a very specific thing with the least amount of in like it's not integral to the way they think or about teaching. It's a thing to do something else. I don't mechanical things mostly. And then there are other people who want like things to be public or portions of things to be public and to create workflows and possibilities there that you can control both on the input side and on the expression and interaction side. And WordPress, provides just such a beautiful foundation for that in as many ways as I've ever thought to do. Because nothing makes me happier than people saying WordPress can't do that, because I've got an example of it doing that. I'm quite confident. Like, so I mean, like that to me about like really thinking and talking to people and getting at what they want to do and then providing the right sort of experiences for them and the right tool. I think that's where people end up happy. Um, and I like to make people happy.
I want to throw something in there based on what Tom just said, because this came up in as we were preparing for this session, but I was learning about WordPress because I was finishing up graduate school and also learning about digital humanities. And in the digital humanities space, WordPress was how most early digital humanities practitioners were sharing their work. They were making websites. That's kind of how I learned about it. But there's also some times where it's not the new shiny thing. And also there was a move toward minimal computing that in many cases made people feel like WordPress was too baggy, that the whole database wasn't necessary. And what was really helpful to me, because I would reach out and collaborate with different people, and depending what I was learning a lot, but I was also seeing people's blinders, right? Like when they could and couldn't look at something like that. And it was a Reclaim event where I saw Tom and Amy speaking, that I was like, wait, he's going to be able to tell me that WordPress can do it. Like I'm going to try to talk to him, because and it really has helped. A lot of people will be like, no, it's not designed for that. So don't use it for that. Use this other tool. And that's not, it's empowering when you start to say, like, there's kind of nothing that it can't really accomplish. And that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm not going to overstate things, but I wanted to put in the perspective, I wanted to bring into the conversation the digital humanities community and that kind of conflict you sometimes run up against. Another one I just want to throw out is the faculty that I've encountered who are like, that sounds cool. And then they try to use it in the classroom and they face a little resistance from their students and they're like running away. Like, no, thanks. I don't want to deal with helping students learn this new technology. It's hard enough for me to use the LMS. And I think in the back of my head a lot about like how I can help faculty give it a try.
You're talking about WonderCat, right? When you say the tool that you were trying to figure out and you talked to Tom about how it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah,
Can you talk a little bit more about you touched on it, but can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about it in depth?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And actually, it started with early on, right as I was finishing grad school, wanting to do digital editions. So this relates to what Austin was talking about. With, I wanted to create a digital edition of this artifact I'd found in my dissertation research. And I was talking to people in digital humanities, and I was like, I could just make a WordPress site and transcribe it. And they were like, no, 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 don't do that. That's a horrible idea. This is what the TEI is. This is why you have to model things in this more durable encoding language, da, 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 da. And so I learned the TEI and I kept hitting a wall of like my knowledge with XSLT and the ability to transform what's encoded into a readable edition, right? And I came all the way around and talked to people long enough to where actually, when an edition already exists, Pressbooks is a wonderful way to build on that edition and have students contribute annotations. And also Markdown's really helpful. And Pressbooks can accommodate both of those things. And WordPress sites can do that. And you can see that in Austin's work. So that was the first lesson. But then suddenly I'm wanting to build a database of reading experiences. And it's helpful for you to see that it was a somewhere in the back of my mind that I was like, WordPress is a database, right? Like I think I've heard that because I'm just a user who makes pages and posts. Like I don't think about it that way. And so it was in conversation with Ed and Taylor Jaden that I was like, this could maybe work, right? Isn't work like what if so I want user experiences to be the object that we're keeping track of, that people can propose. And so I think it was Taylor who first introduced me to ACF, and I've never looked back. It's been incredible. You can make a user experience post type, and then you can also custom create taxonomies. And so then now we're building glossaries of experiences that people have with creative works, and the narrative technologies, or you might consider them literary techniques, that authors use to create those creative works. And the building of the taxonomy through, and we're using Gravity forms to have people submit things. We have Gravity Flow as an editorial workflow, to essentially build out the glossaries that, in my mind, are the future of helping students see what's the connection between the romance novel they love over here and like all of literary history. And it's more granular than genre, which doesn't do us a lot of service always in literary studies. And so, anyway, it was when I started to realize that might be possible that I needed to talk to people who would say, oh, yeah, yeah, you can make that work with WordPress. Here's how you do it. And we wound up even using for our taxonomy the parent-child relationship that's built into WordPress core. But we're renaming it as, primary term and related terms. And so we're still allowing the glossary to build out and expand, using some core functionality that's working really well.
Can I just add to that? So, like, I love that example, and I think it ties back to what Tom was saying earlier about like it being a continuum. I think, right, a lot of the digital humanities conversation about like WordPress is older technology and not the best, like that's really coming out of like research institutions and grad school usage, which is where a lot of the conversation, especially the public work in that field, is. But like when you're working with undergraduate students or when you're working with faculty that are reluctant to engage with the technology, right? The content management system, that's the whole point of it, right? That like people can focus on their content and not have to worry as much about the back end, but that it is endlessly flexible. So like being able to scale up like that and kind of identify what is the need, what is the technical either competence or interest of the users that are actually going to be contributing to this, and then kind of like having different levels of access for people, and kind of setting up an initial project or a pilot and then kind of scaling that up as needed. I think it is still a really very flexible tool and better designed, at least in my experience, for the undergraduate context in which I work, than a lot of the more cutting edge things. So, well,
Yeah, I
Well,
want
and
to. Oh, go ahead,
sorry.
Tom. Go ahead.
Well, you have the additional complexities, right? When you get with like digital humanities tools, is that they are tend not to be well supported, um, tend to struggle in terms of updates. Like they may fit a particular goal. Like I'm thinking of like Omeka and Scalar and some other tools in that realm. Like they're not finding somebody to help you fix or build on those things is not an easy thing. It's like having a rare foreign car and trying to take it to the local mechanic. So, WordPress does put you in a different service category where you're more likely to find people with experience and skill sets. So unless those things do something really magical for you, I tend to, point people to more general service stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna add that the team that I like was gradually assembling with a little bit of grant funding that I had to build out the first like proof of concept for WonderCat. We had a developer who was working at UConn, Brian Daly. He's on our team, and he did a little bit. He made a plugin that would help bring Wikidata into WordPress, like initially. And we presented at a conference, and he said something that he'd never said to me, which is like, if you had built this from the ground up, which a lot of people might have approached it that way, it would have been tens of thousands of dollars of developer hours to get you to a place where you could have people create accounts, contribute, like all of the management of that. You can just set that aside. You don't need to worry about it. And I hadn't realized that's the I knew I was making a practical decision, but I didn't realize it has a little bit to do with what you have funding to accomplish. And so that was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some faculty member who's got a Crusader database that they built from scratch, and now he's just kind of like, won't somebody help me with this? And, you know, on my end, I'm like, I'm not sure we're going to take on like a bespoke creation that I have no idea how any of it works, like as opposed to, something where at least the foundations are set, even if I don't understand this upper level expression part. So, I mean, it comes, I think, full circle in terms of that sort of thing. You can spend your money, but down the line at some point, somebody's going to have to, change the oil timing belts or something. I don't know cars very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think sustainability for any project is really big. And that also sort of goes to something that came up in the chat, which is the idea of students, and you guys have touched on it as well, but students as users, as create, like how students can develop their skills. And that's sort of what Isotta was talking about earlier with students getting involved in the open source project, but I'm thinking also about sustainability of digital humanities projects, of how students can get more comfortable over time.
Mhm.
Do you guys have any thoughts that you want to
Yeah,
about here?
I didn't talk as much about this, but it has been really helpful for me to see what it is the technology making something possible. So I'm going to describe the dynamic that happens where students come in, they've never worked with WordPress before, they've never worked in any, I'll usually ask them, have you ever worked in any kind of platform where there's a dashboard on the back end and then a front end that's different? They're used to social media sites where the things they put are all on the front end and then it's there, right? And so they go from having known nothing to learning how to make a post, add an image, and then I'm teaching them, because this is in a first year writing class or in an upper level English course. Okay, you're going to need to learn the citational practices and the attribution statement practices, right? Like, how are you going to make sure to give credit to what you're using? And that's something they've never encountered. And so then they'll write a post, it'll be done, I'll give them feedback on it, but it will have violated all sorts of copyright things. And because it's private, that's okay, right? And I can say, if you want, and this is the cool thing pedagogically that I really love, is that I can say it's fine if you want to keep this private in the class. This class is not teaching you how to publish on the web, right? But if you're interested in making this shared at the end of the semester, then check out this Tassel guidance on how to propose, how to put forward an attribution statement. Go track down who owns the rights to this image. Yes, you can use it under fair use. And it's like this special place of like, if you want to learn those things, I'm here to guide you, and all of this structure is in place for you. But I'm not telling them they have to know it, which just changes the dynamic entirely. And so students by the end of the semester are whizzes at doing attribution statements, tracking down who owns the rights. And I also know that they'll be good citizens in the ecosystem of the internet, and hopefully not violating people's copyright out there in the future and citing their sources. That would be nice too.
Yeah, I'll just add on that class where we do a digital edition project. we give the students the option of just like keeping it fully private, having it accessible just to the college community, or making it fully public. So using a plugin to kind of just check the, you have to be like log in with Carleton.edu email address basically. And so that has been helpful too, to like have that conversation at the beginning for the same reasons, like seeing the level of investment that people really wanted. And often people will be a little gun shy at first and say, oh, I want to keep it private or only college, and then change their mind at the end, and try to like make it fully accessible because they're proud of what they were able to do. So yeah, I think that ability to teach how to do things right, for the public audience is really helpful.
I want to shout out something that Open Lab does really well, and that I'm now understanding because I'm building WonderCat, how tricky it can be to navigate, which is the display name. The name that is associated with a user publicly, is something Open Lab has invested a lot in making it possible for students to change the name that displays with their work. And I always emphasize this to my students. Right now, when you create your account, you might show as your full name. You might want only your first name. You might want a pseudonym. You can change your mind at any time. You can change how that looks. That's not easy to do, but that they've built through plugins the sort of way that can work inside the Open Lab structure. And I'm actually not sure how other WordPress multi-sites handle it. And I don't know the details of how they've made it happen, but it's an important part of that shift from private work to only a professor to totally public work, is also helping them iterate on their decisions about who they are. So an important thing I'm doing with students is your digital presence. So doing an audit of how they currently appear online, right? And then how would they like to appear online, and who are the audiences that you envision looking at this work that you put out there. So all of that, it can work if I do it iteratively with them across the whole semester. They can change their mind, and they can change their mind after the semester is over, because they can still come back to the site and make changes.
Yeah, Charlie Edwards in the chat just shared the link to OpenLab. Just for anyone who is not aware, OpenLab is a plugin or a set of plugins extending WordPress multi-site to add extra functionality that's particularly useful in higher education. So Mary was showing off some portfolio and student writing examples earlier. Ed, who was on earlier, he uses OpenLab as well, and he talked a little bit about developing with students for OpenLab in the last summit. Pressbooks, which has also come up a couple times, is also a plugin set extension for WordPress that adds functionality particularly targeted towards publishing OERs and open textbooks. So just for anyone who is not familiar with those, they may sound like separate platforms, but they are platforms built on top of WordPress as an extension of that framework. We have a couple of minutes left, although if depending on whether depending on stuff, we may be able to go a little bit over time. But in the event that we're not, is there any last thoughts that you guys want to share? And then if we do go over time, then they won't be last thoughts.
Well, real quick, note that CBOX Open Lab, CUNY played a major role. And I think like that's the one thing I would encourage all the educational institutions to do, is be open, put it out there, even you as individuals. The more stuff we can have out there where we can see what people are doing, and you're not trying to make, I don't know, $150 by selling CBOX licenses in some sort of insufferable way. Like, I feel like education, particularly public education, ought to be helping one another. We ought to be investing the time, effort, and energy in documentation. And if nothing else, just showing the examples. And that's how all this stuff gets better.
Yeah, I'll second that and say that with our interns, we still do a lot of Omeka work, Tom, but we teach our students, partly because that is less of a community. Actually, like contributing to it has much more of an impact. And so what we'll often do is, if there's some custom development we do for a specific project, we'll have our interns take that as their own project to then generalize it and make it work with any potential Omeka site and contribute it to the Omeka plugin or theme repository, so that they can then kind of have this, I contributed to an open source project, like here's the thing, it's anybody can use it. And that just like pedagogically and intellectually and ethically, I think that move of saying like we made this thing that worked well for our own site, other people might want to use it. How can we make it most useful to them? How can we write up the documentation and install instructions so that it works everywhere, and then test it on a couple of different sites? Like that's all great learning too, in addition to being good for the community. So
Yeah, I want to build on that, saying that I think my final word, if it is indeed my final word, would be that I leave this conversation really excited to build towards some of the models of collaboration and what we have so far, because I was the driving, pushing force for like WordPress on our campus. And so, but we have Pressbooks now, and it's a collaboration with the library. And one of the places that I'm really interested in investing energy right now is in the publication of OER, the publication and marketing process, and building out opportunities for our students to work in that space. But Isota's presentation definitely got me thinking about the payoff in your curriculum for having an ecosystem that students can contribute back to. I think we definitely see a space for that with Wiki Education. I think WordPress can be right there, students feeding back into that, and becoming prepared professionally to enter into the workplace from that. That's not a thing we've always done a good job with humanities wise, but I think the open source community is kind of the professionalizing structure that we need to lean into and play up. And I want to definitely do that.
Okay, I think what we're gonna do, I know I just said, and we're gonna wrap up right now. I think what we're going to be doing after this is we're going to be moving to our Hangout. So I would say if you have any last questions for our panelists, next 30 seconds, get them in. And then we will say our goodbyes and our thank yous, and then we will transition a little bit early to the Hangout session. Taylor Jaden has just put the link in the chat for anyone who wants to join us. Zoom webinar does not allow us to transition this smoothly to a meeting, so that's why we're going to be going to that second link. Everyone is welcome.
Everyone, make sure you copy and paste that link before you close your Zoom window.
Yes, that's important. Copy and paste it.
So we'll be in a more traditional Zoom room. We'll be able to hang out and talk with each other a little bit more freely, including with the panelists. Panelists, are you able to stick around? Yeah, so we can talk about, what's next and how can we collaborate and what would those steps look like? Because this is a really cool community we've got gathered here.
Yeah. All right, so it looks like there's not any more questions in the chat. If you do end up coming up with questions, come to the Hangout. It'll be a great time. Let me just get up. I made those slides. I want to use them for at least 30 seconds of this 2-hour event. I want to start by once again saying thank you to our volunteers, to our presenters, and to everyone who made this event possible. Right now up on screen, you will see the events team that worked behind the scenes to coordinate this. Kevin and Destiny weren't able to be with us today, but thank you so much to everyone who helped us coordinate behind the scenes. Thank you to our presenters, to Mary, to Austin, to Tom, to Isota, for sharing your expertise, for sharing your time. You guys are the ones who make these events possible. I made this last slide to invite everyone to join us for the after hours. And again, on June 11th for our Lessons Learned Summit, rollbacks, recovery and rebuilding, lessons learned from what went wrong. Registration for that is open now. We are, as I said before, inviting everyone to be a part of this event where we share lessons that we can learn from failure, because we don't always like to talk about failure. It's a little bit vulnerable, but it happens. Mistakes happen, and being able to be more open about it, we can always learn, sometimes just as much or more from failure as we can from success. We don't want to put anyone on the spot, so we are asking people to volunteer to speak. So we have a call for proposals that is open now. It will be open through May 7th. These will be short, like 10-minute-ish lightning talks. It'll be very low stakes, very low commitment. So if you think that you might be interested, or you know anyone who might be interested, please feel free to just submit. Better to submit than and decide actually I'm not interested than to want to have submitted and not be around. Those links should be in the chat. I can put them in there if they are not already. And then I will share them again at the Hangout session. Yeah, let me go find, I have a script to make sure that I've hit all of the points that I needed to.
We're good, Pilot.
But
Let's go over to the Hangout session.
all right, sweet. Well, thank you all, and I will see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'm just leaving the room open for a couple more minutes in case anybody's still, because we have 13 people in here, in case they're still copying and pasting that link so they don't lose
Yep.
it.
Let me put the
And
lessons,
we'll
the
also post
registration
it in
form
our
for-
Slack just in case
Yes.
anybody accidentally didn't do it, even though we told you to.
Mhm.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.